Los Angeles, 1973. The air inside the private gym was thick with anticipation. Muhammad Ali, the heavyweight champion of the world, stood in the center of the boxing ring. His 6 feet 3 inches frame cast a long shadow across the canvas. But today he wasn't facing another boxer. Across from him stood a man who was barely 5 feet 7 inches tall. Bruce Lee, the martial arts legend who had taken Hollywood by storm. The small crowd of trainers and friends held their breath. What they were about to witness would become one of the most talked about moments in combat sports history. Ali looked at Lee with that famous smile and said 5 words that would echo through the decades. "Come on, Bruce. Hit me." Before we dive into what happened next, if you love stories about legendary encounters and respect between true masters, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss these incredible tales from history. The tension in that gym was electric. 2 of the greatest fighters of their generation, representing completely different worlds of combat, were about to test each other in a way few people ever knew about. This wasn't about ego. This was about mutual respect, curiosity, and the eternal question: what happens when unstoppable force meets a movable object? To understand this moment, you need to know who these 2 men really were. Muhammad Ali was already a living legend. Born Cassius Clay in Louisville, Kentucky, he had shocked the world by defeating Sonny Liston in 1964 to become the youngest heavyweight champion at just 22 years old. But Ali was more than just a boxer. He was a poet, an activist, and a man who stood by his principles even when it cost him everything. His refusal to be drafted into the Vietnam War had stripped him of his title and banned him from boxing for 3 years during his prime. By 1973, Ali had fought his way back. He was 31 years old, training hard for his upcoming fights, and still considered the most dangerous man in boxing. His hands moved like lightning for a heavyweight. His footwork was poetry. And his trash talk? Nobody could touch him there. Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee wasn't just a catchy phrase, it was exactly how he fought. But Ali had a curious mind. He respected martial arts and wanted to understand what made fighters from different disciplines great. He'd heard the stories about Bruce Lee. Everyone in Los Angeles had. Bruce Lee was a phenomenon unlike anything the world had seen. Born in San Francisco but raised in Hong Kong, he had revolutionized martial arts in America. His TV show The Green Hornet had made him famous, but it was his philosophy and fighting style that made him legendary. Lee didn't just practice one martial art. He created his own system called Jeet Kune Do, which means the way of the intercepting fist. Lee believed in adapting, being like water, taking what was useful and discarding what wasn't. He trained actors, taught private lessons to Hollywood's elite, and was preparing to become a major film star. At 32 years old, he was at the peak of his physical abilities. His speed was almost superhuman. He could strike faster than most people could see. His 1-inch punch could send a man flying backward. The meeting had been arranged through mutual friends. Both men trained in Los Angeles. Both were constantly pushing the boundaries of what the human body could do. Both had faced discrimination. Ali for being black and Muslim, Lee for being Chinese in an industry that wanted him to play stereotypical roles or stunt doubles. When they met at that private gym, there was immediate respect. These weren't 2 fighters looking to prove who was better. These were 2 masters who understood something most people never would. True strength comes from discipline, dedication, and an endless desire to improve. The gym belonged to one of Ali's trainers. It was a simple place. Heavy bags hanging from the ceiling, speed bags rattling in the corner, the smell of sweat and leather thick in the air. A handful of people had been invited to watch. They knew they were about to see something special. Ali had been shadowboxing when Lee arrived. The champion's movements were fluid, graceful despite his size. Each punch snapped through the air with power that could end a fight in seconds. Lee watched with the intensity of a scientist studying a fascinating subject. He wasn't intimidated. He was analyzing. They shook hands. Ali's hand completely engulfed Lee's smaller one, but Lee's grip was like iron. "I've heard a lot about you, Bruce," Ali said with that trademark grin. "They say you're fast." Lee smiled back. "I've heard a lot about you too, champ. They say you're faster." The crowd chuckled. The respect between them was obvious. "You know what?" Ali said. "I want to see what you can do. Let's get in the ring." Just friendly. Show me some of that martial arts magic. This was uncharted territory. A heavyweight boxing champion and a martial arts master, standing in a ring together, preparing to engage in a way that had never been documented before. Lee removed his shoes and stepped through the ropes. His movements were cat-like, precise. Ali noticed how Lee walked on the balls of his feet, ready to explode in any direction at any moment. The martial artist wore simple black pants and a white t-shirt. No fancy GI. No traditional uniform. Lee believed in practicality above all else. Ali bounced on his toes, loosening up. Even in his early 30s, after years of brutal fights and a 3-year forced retirement, his conditioning was extraordinary. But today wasn't about conditioning. It was about something more interesting, the fundamental differences between boxing and martial arts. Okay, Bruce, Ali said, raising his hands in his famous boxing stance. I'm going to just stand here. I want you to try to hit me. Really hit me. Don't hold back. I want to see your best. The people watching glanced at each other nervously. Ali was known for his ability to avoid punches. His defensive skills were as famous as his offensive ones. But Lee's speed was legendary in different circles. This wasn't boxer versus boxer. This was something entirely different. Lee nodded. He understood what Ali was doing. The champion wanted to experience firsthand what made martial arts different from boxing. It was a gesture of respect and curiosity. Lee settled into his stance, the famous Jeet Kune Do position. His left foot forward, hands high but relaxed, weight distributed perfectly. He looked like a coiled spring. Then he moved. What happened next took less than a second, but everyone present would remember it for the rest of their lives. Lee's lead hand shot out in a straight punch toward Ali's face. It wasn't a wide telegraph boxing punch. It was a martial arts strike, direct, economical, faster than anything that should be possible for a human hand. Ali's head moved. Just barely. Just enough. Lee's fist passed within an inch of Ali's nose. Damn. Ali laughed, his eyes wide. You are fast, man. Do that again. Lee reset his stance. This time he threw a combination lead hand backhand, a low kick toward Ali's lead leg. Ali dodged the punches with his head movement, but the kick caught him on the shin. Not hard, Lee had pulled it, but hard enough that Ali felt it. Okay, Ali said, stepping back and shaking his leg. I see what you're doing. You're not just punching. You're using everything. This was the revelation. Boxing was an art, refined over centuries, focusing on punches above the waist. But martial arts incorporated kicks, elbows, knees, different angles of attack. Lee could strike from positions that would be illegal in a boxing match. Your turn, champ, Lee said, backing up to give Ali space. Show me what makes you the greatest. Ali's demeanor changed slightly. He was still smiling, still friendly, but now there was a competitive edge. He began to move around the ring, and suddenly everyone remembered why he was called the greatest. His footwork was mesmerizing. For a man who weighed 220 pounds, he moved like someone half his size. He circled Lee, throwing out quick jabs that snapped through the air with a sound like a whip cracking. Lee slipped and weaved, but he noticed something. Ali's reach was tremendous. Those long arms meant Ali could hit him from a distance where Lee couldn't effectively counter, without closing the gap significantly. You're making me work, Bruce, Ali said, throwing a combination jab, right, cross. All of them pulled. None meant to hurt, but all showing the speed and power that had made him champion. Lee could see the punches coming. His visual processing was extraordinary, but the speed and the reach made them difficult to avoid completely. A jab tagged him lightly on the shoulder. They reset again. Now they both understood the equation better. Here's the thing, Ali said, breathing easily despite the movement. In a boxing ring with boxing rules, I've got advantages. My reach, my weight, the rules about where you can hit. True, Lee agreed. But if this were the street with no rules, no gloves, no ring. He left the thought unfinished, but the implication was clear. This wasn't about who would win in a fight. Both men understood that context determined everything. Ali in a boxing ring under boxing rules? Nearly unbeatable. Lee in a street fight with no restrictions? Extremely dangerous. What they were exploring was something deeper, mutual respect for different approaches to combat. Show me that thing I heard about, Ali said. That 1-inch punch. Lee smiled. This was his signature demonstration, proof that power didn't come from winding up big punches, but from proper body mechanics and explosive energy transfer. Ali held up a focus mitt, bracing himself. Lee positioned his fist about 1 inch from the mitt. There was no wind-up, no pulling back. His entire body seemed to pulse, and suddenly his fist drove forward. Crack! The sound echoed through the gym. Ali stumbled backward 2 steps, his eyes wide. What the hell? Ali shook his hand that had held the mitt. How did you do that? There was no room to punch. It's not about the distance, Lee explained, settling back into a relaxed position. It's about using your whole body, the ground, the legs, the hips, the shoulders, all creating one unified force. Boxing does this too, but differently. They talked for several minutes, comparing notes. Ali demonstrated how he generated power in his straight right hand. Lee showed how martial arts use similar principles but applied them to different weapons. Not just fists, but also elbows, knees, and feet. You know what I think? Ali said, leaning on the ropes. I think if you were my size with your speed, you'd be dangerous as hell in a boxing ring. And if I could teach you some kicks, Lee responded with a grin, you'd be unstoppable anywhere. The mood in the gym had shifted. This wasn't a competition anymore. It was a masterclass being taught by 2 masters to each other. What happened next surprised everyone, including Ali and Lee themselves. Let's try something, Lee suggested. Let's do some light sparring, but I'll use martial arts techniques and you use boxing. Not to hurt each other, just to see how they interact. Ali agreed immediately. Both men were scientists at heart, always experimenting, always learning. They engaged in what could only be described as the most unique sparring session in combat sports history. Ali would throw boxing combinations, jabs, crosses, hooks, all with the speed and precision that had made him champion. Lee would respond with martial arts techniques, low kicks to keep Ali's lead leg busy, quick strikes from unusual angles, attempts to get inside Ali's longer reach. What became clear was fascinating. Both styles had tremendous merit, but both had specific contexts where they excelled. Ali's boxing was devastatingly effective at the range where boxing worked best. His jabs controlled distance. His head movement made him hard to hit cleanly. His footwork let him control the ring. When he decided to throw power punches, even pulled significantly, the force ideating. But Lee's martial arts gave him more tools. When Ali jabbed, Lee might parry and immediately fire a low kick. When Ali tried to corner him, Lee could use angles that weren't part of traditional boxing strategy. His speed in close quarters was remarkable. He could strike 3 or 4 times in the time it took Ali to throw one punch. After about 5 minutes of this light sparring, both men were breathing harder, sweating, grinning like kids who discovered a new game. They stopped and touched gloves, a sign of respect. You know what this proves? Ali said, breathing heavily but still smiling that famous smile. What's that? Lee asked. It proves that fighting is fighting. Doesn't matter if you call it boxing or martial arts or whatever. What matters is the fighter. Their speed, their timing, their heart. You've got all of that, Bruce. Lee bowed slightly, a traditional martial arts gesture of respect. And you, champ, you have something special. Your movement, your speed for your size, it's extraordinary. In a boxing match, I don't think I could beat you. Different weight classes, different training. And if we were in a street fight with no rules? Ali asked. Lee smiled. Then we'd both probably walk away and go get something to eat. No point in fighting when there's mutual respect. The crowd that had gathered, maybe 15 people total, erupted in applause. They had just witnessed something that would become legendary, but would remain largely unknown to the wider public for decades. Ali and Lee stepped out of the ring, both men sweating, both energized by the experience. They sat together on a bench, drinking water, talking animatedly about techniques, training methods, philosophy. You know, Ali said, people are always asking me who would win in a fight between different fighters. Joe Frazier versus George Foreman. Me versus Rocky Marciano. It's all hypothetical nonsense. What matters is the respect between warriors. Exactly, Lee agreed. In the movies, they want me to fight in ways that look good on camera. But real fighting? Real martial arts? It's about effectiveness, not flash. Though, he added with a grin, sometimes flash is fun too. They both laughed. One of Ali's trainers approached with a camera, a rare moment captured on film. though it wouldn't surface publicly for many years. Ali and Lee posed together, arms around each other's shoulders. The size difference was striking. Ali towered over Lee, but the mutual respect was obvious in their expressions. "You should be in movies, champ," Lee said. "You've got charisma." "Nah," Ali waved him off. "That's your world. I'm a fighter. Though I wouldn't mind doing a movie if the right one came along." "If I ever make a movie about a boxer," Lee said, "I'm calling you." Sadly, that collaboration would never happen. Within months, Bruce Lee would tragically die at the age of 32, shocking the world and robbing it of one of the most influential martial artists in history. Ali would go on to fight the legendary Rumble in the Jungle, against George Foreman, and the Thrilla in Manila, against Joe Frazier, cementing his legacy as the greatest boxer of all time. But in that moment, in that small gym in Los Angeles, two legends recognized each other as equals. The story of Muhammad Ali and Bruce Lee's private meeting remained mostly unknown for decades. A few people who were there would mention it in interviews, but without photographs or video readily available, it seemed almost like a myth, too perfect to be true. But it was true. And the lessons from that day are as relevant now as they were in 1973. The first lesson is about respect. Ali and Lee came from completely different worlds. Ali was a Black American boxer who had faced racism and persecution for his religious beliefs and his stance against the Vietnam War. Lee was a Chinese-American martial artist who had fought against stereotyping in Hollywood and worked to change how Asian men were portrayed in American media. But when they met, none of that mattered. They saw each other as warriors, as dedicated practitioners of their respective arts, as men who had pushed themselves beyond normal human limits through discipline and determination. In a world that constantly tried to divide them, by race, by style, by sport, they chose to see what they had in common: dedication, excellence, and a desire to constantly improve. The second lesson is about humility. Muhammad Ali was famous for saying, "I am the greatest." But when he stood in that ring with Bruce Lee, he didn't let ego get in the way of learning. He openly admitted that Lee's speed was extraordinary, that martial arts offered techniques boxing didn't have, that different contexts required different approaches. Similarly, Lee, who was confident to the point of sometimes seeming arrogant about martial arts, acknowledged Ali's superior size, reach, and boxing skills. He didn't pretend he could beat Ali in a boxing match under boxing rules. He understood that greatness in one area doesn't automatically transfer to another. True confidence doesn't require putting others down. Both men were secure enough in their own abilities to appreciate the abilities of others. The third lesson is about curiosity. Both Ali and Lee were at the top of their respective fields. They could have easily dismissed each other's styles as inferior. Instead, they were curious. They wanted to learn from each other. They wanted to understand what made the other great. That curiosity, that openness to learning even when you're already the best, is what separates the truly great from everyone else. The moment you think you know everything is the moment you stop growing. The final lesson, and perhaps the most important, is that there's no single best way to do anything. Boxing isn't better than martial arts. Martial arts aren't better than boxing. They're different tools for different situations, developed in different contexts, with different rules and different objectives. The question isn't which is better. The question is, what can I learn from this? How can I grow? How can I take the best from different approaches and make myself more complete? Lee called this absorbing what is useful. Ali, in his own way, practiced the same philosophy. He studied other boxers, took what worked, developed his own unique style that broke all the traditional rules about how a heavyweight should fight. Years later, after Lee's death, Ali would sometimes mention their meeting. "Bruce was something special," he said in one interview. "Fast as lightning. If we'd fought for real, I don't know what would have happened. Good thing we didn't have to find out." That uncertainty, that acknowledgement that the outcome wasn't predetermined, was itself a form of respect. Today, mixed martial arts has proven that all fighting styles have something to offer. The most successful MMA fighters combine boxing, kickboxing, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, and more. They've learned what Ali and Lee understood back in 1973. Limiting yourself to one style limits your potential. But beyond fighting, beyond sports, the real lesson is about how we approach life. Are we curious about people who are different from us? Do we respect excellence even when it comes in forms we don't fully understand? Can we be confident in our own abilities while still being humble enough to learn from others? Do we build bridges or walls? Muhammad Ali and Bruce Lee chose bridges. In a single afternoon, they showed that greatness recognizes greatness, that respect transcends style and background, and that the greatest victories aren't always the ones that happen in front of crowds. Sometimes the greatest victories happen in small gyms, between two warriors who chose understanding over ego, learning over proving, respect over rivalry. If this story moved you, reminded you of what true respect between masters looks like, or taught you something about greatness that goes beyond winning and losing, do me a favor. Hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Leave a comment telling me about a time you learned something valuable from someone you least expected. These stories matter. History matters. And remembering that legends were also just human beings trying to learn, grow, and be better, that matters most of all. In the end, both Muhammad Ali and Bruce Lee changed the world in their own ways. They broke barriers, challenged stereotypes, and inspired millions. And on one day in 1973, they reminded us that the highest form of competition is cooperation, two masters making each other better. That's the legacy worth remembering. That's the story worth telling. And that's why 50 years later, we're still talking about the day Muhammad Ali called Bruce Lee into the ring and said, "Hit me." History was made. Not because of who won or lost, but because both of them chose to be students instead of just teachers. And in that choice, they both became even greater.